The study of literature is the examination of the various elements of literature. So when we look at the plot structure, character, theme, symbol, studying literature is breaking those various elements down in order to find meaning.
Knowing story elements is going to provide you with the tools to access a piece of art in a way that your imagination won't.
You can read all television like a novel because, you know, they're all text, they're all narrative text.
So when we're reading Lost, we have to look at theme, structure, setting, all of the same elements. And there's even more to interpret when you're looking at such a long series, such a complex series.
When I'm teaching theme, I often write on the board, next to the word theme, essentially, what's the big idea?
We want to ask ourselves, okay, what is this story about? What does it mean? What does it mean for our lives?
The interpretation that you come up with for any given text has as much to say about you as it does to say about the text.
Dad, I know you don't believe in me, but I need them to.
The theme of parenthood, good parenthood versus bad parenthood, and the repercussions of a bad father.
You just don't have what it takes.
Or an overbearing mother, and what that will do to a character. That theme is very important in Lost.
Part of the genius of the show is that it is so completely open-ended that it is open to a wide range of interpretations.
Ernest Hemingway famously said that I write the stories and the critics write the symbols. And some films and television shows like Lost become this. They become symbolic. The language is symbolic. All the references are symbolic. You don't want to trap yourself reading something like that or viewing something like that and looking for logical answers. You have to kind of leave open the possibilities that it's representing something else.
We also have particular images, like the eye opening at the beginning. It could symbolize awakening, symbolize enlightenment. And that repeats over and over again, just like any image that becomes a symbol in a story.
In a story like Lost, I'm presuming the writers are placing symbols there as important clues.
It's gonna start raining in 1 minute.
Water is used again and again in Lost. Especially in that first season, we see the water coming down. Usually it's John Locke. You know, he's there, he's being washed away, he's being reborn.
Nice view. Now what?
Now we go down.
In The Substitute, we have two parallel rope ladders coming down the side of a cliff. Also, what's going on in the narrative is two different realities, two different timelines that are parallel to one another. What happens is Sawyer is rescued from one of those rope ladders and pulled onto the other one. So what does that mean for the timelines if we read that as a symbol? Characters are crucial for reading and interpreting a story because they act as the lens for the reader. So it's important to have that character established as a foundation for the rest of the story.
You think they care about you or about Son or about any of us?
Who do you care about, kid?
You have to ask yourself, what is motivating this character? There's no other path to understanding character other than motivation.
Once you are involved, once you care about that character, then you want to follow that character into their story.
The fuller, more rounded characters, these protagonists and antagonists, and these characters who generate conflict and cause events to happen. These are the characters that are going to make the story more meaningful for us.
You shoot, I shoot.
With most characters, you have to pretty much go by what they say, and more importantly, I think, what they do.
If they say one thing and they do another thing,
What do we do with him?
We kill him.
then we can see a more highly textured character.
The way that characters interact with each other
You're not alone. Don't pretend to be.
is going to give you one path to that character's motivation.
From the very beginning, what you want is to see a potential for some sort of romance, a potential for friendship. So from the very beginning, you have to see that there's going to be some pulling and pushing between this web of relationships, this web of characters.
I was looking for Sawyer. I guess I came to the wrong house.
No. Come in. I'm sure you two have a lot to talk about.
We want to see kind of contrasting characters, like for instance, John Locke and Jack. Even though they never seem to get along and they always seem to be pushing in opposing directions,
John!
we can see as viewers that they're complementing one another.
You're not supposed to do this.
Setting is simply a story's time and place. Really, that's all we're talking about. The interesting thing about the setting in Lost is that it's a time and place that we don't know about. It's always unknown. So that always adds a sense of mystery.
Guys, where are we?
More recently, critics have been thinking about setting as a form of character.
And landscape is character, and where the thing takes place, where the story happens, is a vital, part of understanding the meaning in the story.
I've looked into the eye of this island, and what I saw was beautiful.
The island, as we've seen, is a strong character. They want to serve the island. They want to know, does the island want this?
Boone was a sacrifice that the island demanded.
And yet, we don't know how to pin down this character.
In Lost, you have a setting that's almost animate. But it also performs explicit and complex narrative functions. It introduces enigmas, and it introduces, in really dramatic ways, obstacles, which is one of the ways that narrative progresses.
My God, what is this thing?
Exactly.
So we have two different settings here. We have the one that we originated in, which is the island, and then we have LA that comes in seasons 4 and 5. And the viewer can tell that the characters, just by their setting, don't have the kind of purpose that they did on the island. What we have is setting representing purpose and lack of purpose.
Why do you want to leave the island? What is it that you so desperately want to get back to? You have no one. Your father's dead, your wife left you, moved on with another man. Can you just not wait to get back to the hospital? Get back to fixing things?
As if there's something within that setting, within the island, that is so meaningful and so purposeful that why would you want to go back to your material life? It's a spiritual versus the material life.
It is true. All the stories have already been told. So what we have to do is figure out new ways of telling them.
The structure of a story is usually explained in plot format, where you have the initial conflict, you have rising action, you have climax, you have a resolution.
A narrative is essentially a sequence of events that can obviously be rearranged in different ways.
Certainly postmodern writers have played around with it so that it's not exactly, that arc that you study in high school English.
But this is wrong! I'm not supposed to be here! 20!
There's different components to use, like for instance, time, playing around with time using what they call a prolepsis, which is a flash forward, as opposed to an analepsis, which is a flashback.
So a flashback in a story would help the reader to understand some aspect of a character's earlier life, which would, of course, help the reader to understand the character now.
So you want to structure it just right so that, maybe you're being dropped right into the middle of things at the very beginning. You have a flash forward, you have a flashback. You're kind of moving around in time because it's more effective.
In a story, when you're shifting time and place and when you're not really quite sure of where you are, it creates an air of mystery and an air of tension. And I think that with a story like Oedipus, you're discovering the truth along with him through the process of the story.
Once we are invested in that character, we see all these flashbacks, then we want to move forward in the plot. We care even about Ben when we see his flashback.
Mom?
We know, okay, he's a damaged character. I want to know what happens to him.
The flash forwards in Lost work in more interesting ways to destabilize our sense of where we actually are. Just as soon as you think that you know where you are, it moves into the future. Is that reliable? Where are we now?
One thing I want to note about the structure is it's not about necessarily what's going to happen next in Lost. It's about what happened in the past, because since it is a mosaic and there's so many different pieces, some of them are missing, we're talking about a structure here that doesn't go forward. You know, we need those missing mosaic pieces in order to complete that structure. If you didn't have one of these elements, then you wouldn't have a complete story. And these are all interdependent. They're almost one body. Each one of them plays a crucial role as an organ, if you want to look at it in terms of the whole body. They're interdependent. You can't have one without the other.
It's a great experience to be able to be turned on by something like that and want to discover meaning in a television show and uncover the truth behind what you're seeing. It seems to me that when you're watching a television show like Lost, you have to suspect that there's something that you're going to have to find. And it's a magical experience when you discover something that they've laid out for you. It's like an Easter egg hunt.
It is complex, and it's experimental. It's engaging in complex experimental narrative strategies in a media that we don't normally associate with complexity and experimentation, but it is nonetheless the primary media through which narrative circulates through the world. And that's how it's possible for me to say that, you know, really, Lost is training my students to become better readers of literature. It's challenging them in new ways.